On Viewpoint, the Anambra 2025 gubernatorial race has taken a dramatic twist. Female brokers are stepping into the arena, no longer silent influencers but decisive players who may shape the outcome of the contest. At the same time, whispers grow louder as separatist group the Indigenous People of Biafra (IPOB), its political wing and its allies edge closer to endorsing a candidate, a move that could redefine alignments across the states. And just when the stakes couldn't get higher, INEC's recognition of former Senate President David Mark, hailed by ADC governorship candidate John Nwosu, as a major gesture for Anambra voters. The question is clear: who truly holds the keys to Anambra's future? The power brokers, the endorsements, the institutions, or the electorate? This is Viewpoint, where we discover perspectives and embrace dialogue. I'm your host, Odiawa AI. Join us shortly. You're welcome back to the show. Anambra 2025, a battlefield not just for men with heavy war chests, but also for women, as evidently as you can see in the Amazons, who are no longer content with cheering on the side from sidelines, from fairy exchanges between Nonye Soludo and also Senator Uche Ekwunife, to the quiet but strategic mobilization of thousands of market women across 179 communities. This election is shaping up to be Anambra's boldest experiment yet with female political power. Now, on Viewpoint, we ask a question: will these women merely decorate the ballot, or will they decide who becomes the next governor of Anambra State? INEC's record tells us something remarkable. Out of 16 political parties cleared to contest, 8 have female candidates on their tickets, 2 women as flag bearers, 6 others as running mates. Chioma Grace Ifemeludike of the AAC, Ndidi Christy Olieh of the NRM, stepping forward boldly as candidates themselves for a state where politics has been merely dominated by men since 1999. Now, this is no small shift. Now, beyond the ballot, women are mobilizing on the ground. The ABGA Women's Summit drew more than 2,000 women from all 179 communities. From the market women in Onitsha and Oka, they pledged blocks of votes. The civil society groups are also not left out either. They are running voter education campaigns left, right, and center. Suddenly, women are no longer just voters, they are also power brokers as we speak. But let's be clear, politics is never polite. Just last week, we saw a political public clash that exposed how fairy this contest has become. Nonye Soludo, First Lady, entrepreneur, and mobilizer of Chukwumacha Soludo versus Senator Uche Ekwunife, veteran lawmaker, now the deputy gubernatorial candidate for the APC, of course, tagging along with Nwachukwu. What began as a debate about qualifications turned into a battle of words filled with insults and even personal allegations. It wasn't just about Soludo versus Nwachukwu here anymore. It became a showcase of how far women are willingly ready to defend their turf or their territory in Anambra politics.
I published all my certificates, all from beginning to the end. I published my first degree, and of course, University of Calabar is there. I published my second degree, Nanda University is there. I published my even PhD, postgraduate diploma in marketing. This is there. I published my Atlantic University PhD certificate. This is there. And they're no longer talking about, getting a forged certificate. They're not talking about accreditation. I mean, these are internal processes of the university, which, of course, they were accredited, but it is actually the internal process of the university. Far remains, when you're talking about fake or forgery, you talk about originality of the article. If I come to buy this phone from you, I bought the phone from you. So originality is not in question. Whether the phone has to go through processes before it starts selling is entirely the business of the seller. I mean, it has nothing to do with me. So nobody can question the originality of all my certificates. And it is actually very unfortunate that all those issues are coming up, considering where I'm coming from.
You know why some people have raised that issue is that if you recall the situation in Anambra and Bielsa State in the governorship election there with the deputy governorship candidate, Lawrence Orujakbo, whose NYC certificate turned out to be fake, and he was eventually disqualified, and his governorship
that one is a different matter altogether. That one, NYC said they didn't issue. The university couldn't have said they didn't issue. I went through the processes of my courses, everything, and it was issued to me. So it's a different thing altogether. It's not the same. All my documents are there and they're there for public to see and also to be testified in court.
Why you? I mean, there are other candidates in this election. You're not even the governorship candidate. You're the deputy governorship candidate.
I don't know why, honestly. I can't say why, but we know our strengths in Anambra politics. We know our strengths, we know our capacities, we know our capabilities. When in Anambra is when they think you have something to offer, they attack you. I always take it to maybe football field. And nobody attacks someone that is not having the ball. Once you have the ball, all attacks will be. But I'm going on board with this attack. I mean, it's becoming so intentional because it's becoming so, something that somebody will just want to do. I'm not a candidate. This is the first time I'm seeing where all barrage of attacks should be on a deputy governor. I mean, but it's okay. It's fine. We are slugging it out. I'm so used to them. One thing about running an election against men is that they have so much to attack a woman as, especially sleeping with a man, going up and down and all of that. Once they say that, what else would they tell their fellow man that they're sleeping with a woman? So we are used to all those, stories and all of that. But it has never really deterred anybody. They told those stories, and I got to the position of my career, in the bank. They told all those stories, and I won this House of Reps twice. They told the same stories. I got to the Senate. It's like the story is even helping me, to get to where God wants me to be. One thing in life is that, two things: work hard and put it in prayers. No amount of fabrication, storytelling, blackmail, slander can destroy your hard work. I've been a member of House of Reps for 8 years. My colleagues that I worked with cannot tell you Yomi is a lazy woman. They will tell you this is a very hardworking legislator. This is a perfect legislator. This is a legislator, of course, that had the interest of her constituents when she was there. In the Senate, the same thing. My colleagues in the Senate will tell you that, no, don't mess with her. This is a very serious legislator. So what stories are you telling? You're telling to those who know me. That is why the stories are not making sense. They're not adding up. They're not adding up because the people you want to hear the story, those people know me one way or the other. I'm a nationalist today in this country.
Now, this is not background noise. This is the real test of how influential these Amazons will be come November 8th. Now, look at Senator Uche Ekwunife, aka Iyom, as she's fondly called, a two-term House of Reps member, a senator, a woman who has tested the governorship waters before. She has shifted across the PPA, ABGA, PDP, and now currently the APC. Whatever you think of her, she has the experience. She is battle-hardened and knows how to mobilize votes. Her presence alone transforms Ukachukwu's candidacy from theory to serious contention. On the other hand, wife to incumbent governor Nonye Soludo, she was not always a politician or has not always been a politician, but as the first lady, she has built the networks. Initiatives like our Healthy Living Pet Scheme and NYC Adopted Projects has now become one of Governor Soludo's strongest campaign assets. Her influence, measured not by titles, but by the women she can bring to the polling booth come November 8th. Then you have the outsiders, Chioma Ifemeludike, Nollywood actress turned AAC candidate. She may lack financial muscle, but her candidacy resonates mainly with the youth and women who are tired of old politics. The likes of Josephine Aneni, Bianca Ojukwu, Ifeoma Okaro, which one with her history, pedigree, or grassroots touch will align. The truth is simple. No serious campaign in Anambra 2025 can afford to ignore these women which I have just mentioned. Now let's crunch the numbers. Out of Anambra's 2.8 million registered voters, women make up just over 51%, more than half the electorate. When you match that against the fact that women dominate the informal market economy, citing areas like Onitsha, Oka, and Nnewi, you begin to ponder or wonder, viewing it in picture, if women decide to vote as a bloc, or if influential female mobilizers swing even 10% of undecided voters, that could be the difference between victory and defeat. Remember in 2021, governorship race margins in some local governments were as slim as 5,000 votes. In 2025, that margin could come down to how effectively women show up with their networks. But Here's where I presume we ought to stand. Anambra 2025 is not just about men fighting for power. It's about whether women, after years of being undercounted, can seize this moment to rewrite the playbook or the narrative. Yes, challenges will remain: underrepresentation, lack of resources, or political violence. But the resolve we've seen from the markets to the rallies, from the ballots to the back rooms or behind the scenes, suggests that women are no longer begging for a seat at the table. They are practically dragging their own chairs to the front row. The big question will arise: will their efforts translate into actual power on November the 8th, or will the same old machinery overwhelm their own influence? That is just one of the tensions driving this race. We'll take a break shortly, but when we return, the spotlight shifts to the developments stirring the political waters in Anambra as the political wing of separatist group IPOB and its allies say they are ready to endorse a candidate for the Anambra gubernatorial race. What could this mean for the balance of power? Join us shortly. You're welcome back to the show. Now, for years, IPOB has been synonymous with agitations outside the ballot box, street protests, stay-at-home crises or orders. But now, in the run-up to the Anambra governorship race, a twist has actually unfolded. The indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, its political wing, says it is not ready to stand aloof. It will endorse a candidate, and it will do so in collaboration with other Igbo-focused groups. Now, for some, this is history. For others, it is a dangerous gamble, if we may say. But one thing might be clear. This decision could tilt the political balance in Anambra in ways we have never seen before. Now, here's what we know, factually speaking. IPOB's political wing announced that consultations were over. The endorsements are imminent. They call it a new beginning for the Igbo people. In their own words, instead of guns or instruments of violence or machetes, it is time to carry the voter's card. This is a radical shift in messaging, if you will agree. For years, separatist agitation told young people to boycott elections or polls within Anambra State and its environs. Now, the same wing is urging them to vote. This is no small change. Originally, they considered fielding their own candidates, but they claimed the timetable was too tight. Instead, they choose to build alliances, consult pressure groups, and rally behind one candidate they believe can serve the interests of the Igbos at large. That candidate's name still under the wraps, but once revealed, it could send shockwaves through the party structures within Anambra State. Now, let's go down memory lane on. Let's not forget, IPOB's political relationship with elections in the Southeast has been rocky. In 2027 and 2021, boycotts were declared. Voter turnouts plunged, especially in rural areas. The message was clear: Nigeria does not represent us. Reason being political marginalization, little leverage in negotiations, and a state like Anambra, with its vibrant economy, left in the middle of agitation and absenteeism. This endorsement signals an admission that disengagement has not worked. The real influence, real bargaining power, coming not from withdrawal, but from participation. This is the politics of realism meeting the idealism of separatist dreams. Now imagine this. Having a mental picture, IPOB's political wing endorses a candidate from the ruling party, ABGA. Suddenly, Soludo's incumbency gains a new layer of legitimacy. Or picture them throwing their weight behind the opposition figures such as Nicholas Ukachukwu of the APC, even a Labour Party candidate. Overnight, voter blocks will definitely shift. Young people, once staying at home, suddenly persuaded to pick up their PVCs. Market women alike, transport unions also, and also grassroots influencers, all recalibrating because IPOB has entered the political ring. But there's also this risk. Will other Nigerians outside the Southeast see this as a dangerous flirtation with secessionists? Could this endorsement taint a candidate nationally and within Anambra? Will undecided voters be drawn closer or pushed away? These are not abstract questions. They go to the heart of legitimacy and credibility. Now, let's talk about the numbers or visit the numbers. Anambra has about 2.8 million registered voters. Historically, IPOB's influence is strongest among the youths, aged 18 to 35 to be precise. In 2019, over 40% of the state's registered voters were in brackets. If IPOB's political wing can mobilize even a half of them, let's say about 400,000 to 500,000 young voters, that's enough to determine who will win the November elections this year. Remember in 2021, Soludo won about 112,000 votes. That's how low turnout was back then. So if IPOB actually channels young people to the ballot, they won't just influence the race, they could dominate it. Now here's my take. This move could both be bold and risky. Bold because it challenges the old script or old narrative that separatists can only resist, never participate. Risky on the other hand because politics is about compromise, negotiations, and sometimes betrayal. IPOB's political wing is walking into a space where promises are made and broken every election season. If their chosen candidate fails to deliver, credibility will collapse. But if experiment works, if they succeed, it's turning agitation into structured participation. Then Anambra 2025 will be remembered as the moment IPOB shifted from street rhetoric to ballot power. So we await the announcement. Once truth stands tall, the Anambra governorship race is no longer just about incumbents or challengers. It's now about whether a separatist movement can wield power to the ballot, whether youthful anger can be converted into electoral numbers, and whether endorsements from IPOB's political wing will crown a new governor or complicate the legitimacy of whoever emerges. We'll be back after this short break, returning with John Nwosu's reaction as he hails INEC's recognition of former Senate President David Mark, calling it a major democratic gesture for Anambra's voters. Join us shortly. You're welcome back to the show. This is still Viewpoint. Now, in moments of uncertainty regarding the Anambra governorship elections, one headline burst into the scene. Nwosu hails INEC's recognition of Mark, describes it as a major gesture for Anambra voters. Looking at it on the surface, it sounds procedural. INEC regularizes a party's leadership. ADC breathes again. But beneath the ink of that statement upon paper lies a storm, a political opening, and probably a rebirth of alternatives in a state choking under familiar dominance. Now let's break it down. John Nwosu, governorship candidate of the African Democratic Congress, ADC. INEC, the electoral umpire, regularizes David Mark's National Working Committee, and suddenly the ADC becomes legitimate, not just on paper, but in perception. Nwosu calls it a major democratic gesture. Why? Because in a state where ABGA has ruled for nearly 2 decades and PDP once strutted unchecked, voters had probably been gasping for a breath of fresh air rather. This recognition, at least for now, throws open the window. Going back to 2003, PDP was the colossus, the unmovable rock, and yet out of that arrogance, ABGA emerged as the alternative party, and the people of Anambra embraced it with both hands. Now, fast track to 22 years later, ABGA, once the underdog, is now accused of the same arrogance, the same disdain. The cycle will continue to repeat, don't you think? As now Nwosu positions ADC as the new vessel of hope, an echo of history, challenging existing power. But beyond the symbolism, what does this actually mean? Nwosu anchors his campaign on the scheme's agenda, that is, security, health, education, energy, employment, markets, and social welfare. He speaks of technology to reinforce security. He dismisses the conspiracy theories about INEC playing a hidden script, and he insists this recognition forces political parties to abandon theatrics and campaign on issues that touch the voters. Insecurity, jobs collapsing or collapsing markets also, and the arrogance of the incumbency. But here's the drama playing out. Will voters believe that ADC is truly viable or reliable? Or is it just a convenient headline that dies before November? Now let's play by the numbers. In 2003, ABGA rode a wave of dissatisfaction. PDP's collapse in Anambra was seeded by voter anger. In 2021, Charles Soludo of ABGA pulled roughly 112,229 votes, just about 10% of voters registered. That means nearly 90% either voted elsewhere or probably stayed back at home, dictating voter apathy. Now imagine in 2025, if even 15% of disenchanted voters throw their lots behind a fresh platform such as the ADC. That's enough to upset old calculations. Numbers won't actually lie. The path to power in Anambra will be narrow and will definitely not be closed. Now this is where it gets interestingly appealing. INEC's recognition may look like bureaucracy, But in politics, perception is all about power. Recognition will definitely equal legitimacy. Legitimacy in turn will equal viability, and viability will attract coalition. Nwosu talks of coalition of patriotic opposition politicians. That phrase is heavy, if you will agree. It hints at alliances, strategy, and gathering restless forces under one tent. If this grows, uniting into one body, forming a single voice, the ADC becomes more than a headline. It actually poses itself or becomes a threat to the incumbents and other top opposition parties. So viewers, here's the question. Is INEC's recognition a footnote, or is it the matchstick that will light the fire? Well, as the dust settles, one thing is clear. INEC's gesture is evidently more than a signature. We've seen how the game in Anambra 2025 is no longer a straight line. Female power brokers quietly but firmly reshaping the narrative in the gubernatorial race. In the background, IPOB's political wing and its allies are preparing to tip the balance with an endorsement that could send shockwaves through the states. And just last week, Nwosu hailed INEC's recognition of Mark's leadership in ADC, calling it a major democratic gesture for voters hungry for an alternative. The strands are clear, power is shifting, alliances are brewing, and legitimacy is being vested. That will be all on Viewpoints, where we discover perspectives and embrace dialogue. I've been your host, Odiawa AI.